We want to welcome back Congressman Brad Sherman, Democrat of California, and he's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. So, sir, let's begin with the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. In your mind, what is her legacy?
She symbolized the United Kingdom and in a way symbolized the Western world for decades and decades. And she presided over a time when the United Kingdom and the United States were very close, step by step, all the way through World War II, the Cold War, and even now in Ukraine. She also brought grace to public affairs, and we live in a shrill time. It's hard to identify other public leaders who you say, well, there's grace.
We're learning that King Charles III will be proclaimed just that, the king, tomorrow, officially. What do you know of him, and any thoughts as he prepares to take over the monarchy?
Well, he's got big shoes to fill. There's obviously controversy with his first marriage and all that. He steps in with less a reservoir of popularity than his mother did, and we'll see. It's going to, even if he was as good at doing the job as she was, starting in the 1950s, gave her a tremendous leg up that he won't have.
Well, let's bring it back to the domestic front and to your home state of California. Energy prices there, energy issues there. I want to play the leader of the Republican Party in the Senate, Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, on the Senate floor, blaming Democrats for California's energy crisis. Here's what he had to say.
Democrats have made California's electrical grid into a giant experiment to try out all of their misunderstandings about energy policy. It's not going well. With hot weather demand surging, California authorities are sweating political shortfalls of up to 5,000 megawatts. California's love affair with fickle, unreliable green energy could force its residents to put up with rolling blackouts just to conform to wealthy liberals' preferences. The government had to send out an emergency message begging citizens to ration power. Ironically, just weeks after announcing a future ban on gas-powered automobiles, the state is now begging folks not to charge their expensive electric cars to avoid crashing the grid. So California Democrats don't want you putting gas in your car. They don't want you to plug in your car either. That's exactly where their war on energy would leave the American people, going nowhere fast.
Congressman, your response.
Texas had a major electric problem just a few months ago. I didn't see the gentleman from Kentucky going to the floor and trying to make a partisan issue out of that. To turn to a state that's just faced the greatest heat wave any of us can remember and say, do nothing about global warming, fan global warming, burn as much carbon as you possibly can, shows almost a nihilistic approach, a burn the country down and enjoy doing it approach. The fact is that electric vehicles charge can be 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's not when we're going to have a blackout. That's when other demand is down. Electric vehicles can, and in future will, and some do already, put power back into the grid at key times and then use their batteries and pull the power out of the grid at that 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. window. Less than 1% of our electricity currently goes to electric vehicles. But where is Mitch McConnell's answer to global warming? Except burn it all down. And he was born into an America that was a great country, and he seems to be intent on doing nothing about global warming.
And California announced just recently regulations to bring California's to do more on the energy. Talk about what will happen in California and how the state, what is the state doing that the rest of the country is not doing, even other countries?
Well, the recent announcement is that after in roughly a decade, we will not be selling gasoline-powered vehicles. Now, it'll take a decade or more after that before all the gas-powered vehicles are down to a small percentage of those on the 405 freeway. But that we see prices of electric vehicles coming down. We see the tax credits that Congress just adopted and the president signed. And we're going to see American energy produced in America running our vehicles. And if we produce oil, we'll be able to export it to countries that would otherwise be dependent upon Russia and Iran. So this is a huge step forward from our national security. And reflect on this. If Democrats hadn't pushed for a higher fuel economy standards for decades, I'd be driving a car getting what my first car got, like 8 miles to the gallon. You'd be driving one too. American demand for gasoline would be double or triple what it is. So prices would be way off the roof, and we'd be filling our tank every 3 days. So thank God that Democrats pushed through fuel economy standards, because imagine a country in which the average car was getting 9 miles to the gallon.
In the history of fuel economy standards, talk about that. When did that push begin? Where are we now?
Well, we are to a much higher standard. We're going to a higher standard. I haven't memorized the exact numbers,
that's fine. But
I do know my first Plymouth, and it was the 9 miles to the gallon. Maybe I could have driven a little better and gotten 10, but of course, miles per gallon will become irrelevant if we're driving electric vehicles.
Let's turn our attention to this month coming up and the House agenda. Right before the election, what pieces of legislation, what will the debates be like in the House before voters go to vote in November? Well,
the debates will be highly partisan. You're an observer, and we'll have calls coming in so we can get a taste of that. The actual action as far as passing legislation, we'll keep the government open with a continuing resolution. There'll be a vote on same-sex marriage in the Senate. I doubt very much that it'll get 60 votes, but it'll put people on record. We'll be passing a resolution about the passage of the Queen, but this is not a time when you expect a Congress which has not been all that functional to. And we live in a non-functional time. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, Congress was a much more cooperative organization. But let's not shut down the government.
What are your concerns about President Biden's approval rating? We've seen a little bit of an uptick, but a lot of voters talking about the economy and giving him low ratings on that. What are your concerns about Democrats' prospect of holding on to the House because of that?
Well, first you talk about the low ratings. Everything gets low ratings today, with the exception of chocolate fudge sundaes. But every institution, every politician, it used to be if you had 50% approval in your district, that was terrible. Why only 50%? Now, I mean, you go on the floor and brag about it. Second, we dealt with COVID. We didn't deal with it perfectly as a society, and no society in the world knew what to do with it. And the effect on our economy was that we kept people's incomes high, and I don't hear Republicans contradicting that. They couldn't go to bars, restaurants, and sporting events, so they bought everything on Amazon. And that pushed up the price of goods and is still having an effect. And then, of course, they'll try to blame Biden for the fact that factories in China are shut down. That isn't Biden, that's Xi. But if factories in China are shut down, it's going to be hard to supply American stores. So I think the rap on Biden for the inflation is misplaced. That being the case, presidents always get more credit and more blame for the economy than they deserve. But gas prices are coming down, and I think that combined with this Dobbs decision, which was horrendous on the abortion issue, may be enough to get Democrats to continue to control the House.
We're talking with Congressman Brad Sherman this morning, Democrat of California. Please join in on the conversation. He'll take your questions or comments The phone's divided by Democrats, Republicans, Independents. Start dialing in now. Congressman, I want to get your reaction to Axios' scoop here. Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the Republicans in the House, on September 19th is going to unveil a commitment to America if Republicans win the majority. And here is what Axios is reporting. The document will be much smaller. It aims to give Republicans a unified message to run on in the final stretch before November. And it will include, they're committed to an economy that is strong, focusing on inflation, high gas prices, supply chain issues, a nation that is safe with a focus on crime and immigration, a future that is free. The section headers include making sure every kid in every neighborhood can succeed, better care and improved health care outcomes for all Americans, and a government that is accountable. The final section emphasizes the extent of the oversight efforts Republicans are promising next year if they take back the majority. Your reaction?
Well, I think he's handing us the election there. He says dedicated to freedom, and yet he's there to take away a woman's right to choose. And so many of the Republicans, particularly those in tough districts, have signed on to legislation that says that the fetus is protected from the moment of conception, not even the moment of implantation. That outlaws an awful lot of birth control. So his idea of freedom is to outlaw birth control and take away a woman's right to choose. His idea on health care, he's opposed every effort to try to make sure that Americans have health care insurance. He's opposed every effort to bring down the price of pharmaceuticals, and of course we just passed a law that will bring down the price of 50 leading pharmaceuticals and cap insulin prices at $35 a month. He's opposed all that. So he's for health care as long as you don't have insurance and the prices are sky high, and he's for freedom except for women.
Let's get to calls. Larry in Galesburg, Illinois, Republican.
Hi. I just had a couple of questions. One is the representative going to take an electric plane from California to Washington, since he's a lifetime politician? And two, is Plymouth, I'm sorry, but back in the 50s, I had a car. I was getting 14, 16 miles to the gallon, probably paying 75 cents or 50 cents a gallon.
Well, back at that time, 75 cents then is well over $4 now, and maybe I should have consulted you before I bought a car in the 70s, because mine only got 9 or 10. Maybe I should have gotten the model of Plymouth that you got. As to an electric plane, no, I will not be using an electric plane. No, we will not completely ban in our society the use of fossil fuels. The goal is to be at net zero, but if we can simply bring our carbon emissions down, I think we can turn the corner on global warming. So this idea that there will not be any use of carbon fuels starting when my next plane back to Los Angeles is obviously false.
We'll go to Tennessee, Old Fort, Tennessee. Bob, a Republican?
Yes. I want to know, do you think we'll be moving off of paper money and coins? And another thing, you must not believe in the Bible. Homosexuality is a sin, and you're expecting us to accept that?
You know, if you read the Bible, eating a cheeseburger is a sin because it mixes meat and milk. That's at least my Bible. But I don't think we should put people in jail for a cheeseburger, and I don't think we should discriminate against people because of who they love. As to paper money, we've mostly gone away from it. It continues to be used to some degree, and I think you'll see a continuation of those trends.
John in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, Independent.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to ask the representative pertaining to electric vehicles with the mining. You know, not in my backyard is the saying, typically. You know, all the materials for the batteries, or the 90% of them probably, are coming from other countries where slave labor is used to strip mine the earth, which is contradictory to your climate change agenda. So I'm kind of wondering how you can weigh how you're straddling the fence on that situation.
Well, you're not going to be having a perfect world, not next decade, not the decade after. There is going to be mining. Mining is not, as you point out, is not pristine all the time, but it doesn't, it's not a major source of global warming if it's done right. As to slave labor, we've got to make sure that the material coming to our country is not produced by slave labor, which is why I've worked successfully on legislation to prevent us from bringing in products from Xinjiang province where Uyghurs are enslaved. But the idea that because Democrats want to improve the environment that we think, or that it's going to be some perfect world with no mining and no jet fuel is just absurd. Let's do better. We're not going to be perfect.
South River, New Jersey. Anthony, Democratic caller.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Thank you, Congressman, for your service. I'm a registered Democrat my whole life. Lately, though, I feel I've been lied to a lot by the Democrats. I wanted you to comment on 3 things of legislation that I would like to see passed that are the majority of the people's support. All these talking points are they're just wrong. I'm going to give you 3 talking points, and I'm going to ask you for legislation on them.
That's
First
3 questions. I hope we get some other people in as well.
Okay, I know you don't want to hear my voice. Why
don't you give me your best idea and give some other people a chance to talk? Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to go for 1 point. Reclaiming my time. Okay. So here's the thing about, I know we have a victimless crime of the overdoses. It's not a victimless crime. I wish we'd stop saying that. But on the abortion, the majority of the people are for abortion, but they want a limit on it. Now, the bills that you guys just tried to pass have all the way up to full term, even if the baby's outside of the body. Why are we saying that all the Republicans, everybody's against abortion? Like, I'm a Catholic, I'm pro-life, and I would never have an abortion because, I can get pregnant, but I would never have an abortion. But
okay, let's take your point about.
Let me deal with this. Democrats in the House of Representatives support restoring the Roe v. Wade standard, and that is a standard that allows states to provide some regulation in the second trimester and much more severe regulation in the third trimester. Democrats are not for abortion in the 9th month for trivial reasons. And to say that a bill that's going to restore Roe v. Wade is somehow going to change our society from what it was when Roe v. Wade was the law is simply wrong.
We'll go to Los Angeles. Michelle, Republican caller.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm just curious on fuel efficiency. The battery, the electric battery, will have a problem with once they're spent in storing them. And I'm just wondering, what do you think of the future of hydrogen fuel for cars as opposed to electric batteries?
I'm not an engineer, and I can't tell you whether a hydrogen car is better than an electric car for the purposes we're trying to achieve. And I think that it's up to consumers, the private market, and the engineers to see what products are there and what consumers want to buy. And I'm an agnostic as to which version of a zero-emission vehicle we have. And I realize they're not zero emissions, since either hydrogen or electric, you have to generate some electricity, or you need electricity to generate the hydrogen. So none of this is perfect, but they're both steps in the right direction.
Alan in Olney, Illinois, Democratic caller.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. My question is about electric vehicles, and I happen to own a hybrid right now, and I get about 49 miles per gallon. My question is, a lot of states will use the gasoline taxes to pay for roads and bridges, etc. And I know that the Republicans would have a no to every answer that people would come up with, but I live out in a rural area, and there's a concern that the farmers would have to travel a lot more distance-wise, and if you have electric vehicles based on mileage, they're kind of scared about that.
Well, if you drive hundreds of miles a week, you pay a higher gas tax now, and I don't know what system we'll have to finance our roads. One is the user fee, where you're charging people based on how much they drive. or based on how much gasoline they use, which has been roughly correlated, or whether we'll use general revenue funds as we do for some of the road programs, such as the BIF that we just passed. So we will have to decide whether it's a user fee or general revenues. If it's a user fee, then obviously people who use the roads more will, as they do now, pay more for the roads.
Walbridge, Ohio. Bernice, Independent. Bernice, good morning in Walbridge, Ohio. Are you there?
Hello?
Hello, Bernice. Go ahead.
Yeah, they got the name wrong. It's supposed to be Ernie of Walbridge, Ohio.
Hi, Bernie.
Hi. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question. I've been independent about 30 years, and this whole thing around Donald Trump, there's enough here with what he did at Georgia phone call, what he did at the Capitol inciting a riot, what he did at Mar-a-Lago, taking all that stuff over there. This guy is nothing more than a con man, in my opinion. I read his book, The Art of the Deal, when he was running. I'm glad I didn't vote for this guy. This guy is so corrupt. He don't care about nobody but himself. And all these people that worked with him, that helped him, from Roger Stone to Flynn and everybody, that he's pardoned some of these people, and some he didn't pardon, some have got to go to jail, and this and that. But he just sits at Mar-a-Lago living the life of Riley. This is ridiculous. People can't see this guy wants to be a dictator. He looks up to Putin. He looks up to Adolf Hitler. He looks up to dictators because that's what he wants to be more than the President of the United States. He wants people to bow to him, to do everything there is like they do to the other people over in those other countries. Donald Trump is a very dangerous, dangerous man. And he needs to go to jail. If he don't go to jail, he needs to stay at Mar-a-Lago and do whatever the hell he wants there the rest of his life.
Okay, Bernie. Or Ernie, sorry.
I think Bernie was clear. I was the first to file articles of impeachment against Donald Trump in the first year of his presidency. I think he will go down as one of our worst presidents, and I'm hoping that his grip on the Republican Party is released.
What about the search of the Mar-a-Lago home in Florida, the FBI search, and what you've read about what they found? Are you getting any, as a member of Congress, Foreign Affairs Committee, are you getting any read-ins from
I'm just amazed as to why he took the material and didn't return it. It's almost as if he wanted this search to take place. There is no purpose that he could not have achieved, either honest, if there was any honest purpose for him to have those, or nefarious that required him. He could have copied those documents. He could have read them while he was still in the White House. He could have returned them in the first month on Mar-a-Lago. He was almost taunting the Justice Department, and it has worked to his political advantage and disadvantage. His grip on the Republican Party has intensified as he really forced this search on the Justice Department. Whether he did so deliberately because he wanted that sympathy in the Republican Party, or whether he kept the documents because he's just obstinate and pig-headed and arrogant, we'll find out later.
Amherst, Massachusetts. Rachel, Independent caller.
Hello, thank you for taking my call. I'd like to address Representative Sherman as my Foreign Affairs Committee member, one of them, and I have a question regarding, well, I'm sort of on a fact-finding mission about Haiti, and I need something. I have a friend. He's a first responder. He's been doing that for, I think, like a quarter of a century almost. He's still a young man, but he's dedicated his life to first response in climate disasters, and he's been in Haiti ever since the earthquake for 12 years now. He's in a very desperate situation. The spring water that they get water from, his community, has dried up. They're food insecure. They're water insecure. There are guns in the streets, guns on the roads. He can't take his child to the embassy because the embassy is in the capital, which is besieged by gun-carrying gangs of people who will kidnap an American child, who will, shoot people on buses going to the city, and it's a very desperate situation, and he's not alone. I'm sure that there are many thousands of other families, American families in Haiti, who are petitioning their embassy for the paperwork they need, the documents they need to legally.
Rachel, I'm going to jump in. Congressman, your reaction?
Well,
your response?
I don't know our friend's situation. Obviously, our embassy has got to serve the American citizens who are there in Haiti. If there's some reason they can't get to Port-au-Prince, then we've got to do things electronically if that's available, or by phone. I don't know if this individual is in need of evacuation, or the caller was describing a situation that I'm unaware of. But all over the world, we take care of American citizens.
Congressman, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time this morning.